Welcome to Art for All Ages Online. Today we have a lovely painting for you, painting number 12. It's called The River Bayou. It is kind of like a swampy feel that gives us that feel of the bayou. It is a very simple painting. It only requires the use of a little bit of brushwork, but most of it can be done with nothing more than our good old friend the sponge. And there is one template that is also used to create some feel for today's paintings, and we'll show you what that's all about when we get started. Let's take a look. This is today's painting, painting number 12, The River Bayou. As you can see, we have the river, and it looks like the River Bayou. We will be using, with today's painting, stencil number 1. If you do not yet have all of the needed items, the stencils and other supplies to create today's painting, please go back to our website to purchase any of those other additional items that you may complete today's painting. Let's get started. So with today's painting, we will have the standard yellow border of the tape wrapped around and one other extra piece of tape here towards the top half of the painting. And what we're going to do is we're not going to paint here at all, and we're only going to paint right here for the sky area here for the beginning of the painting. Let's go ahead and get started by using the brush simply to mix up the paint. We'll get our brush wet, and we're going to ask you to mix up a bright blue, like a Prussian blue, in your palette. We're going to take that blue and create the sky. With many of our paintings, we do 3 simple steps over and over and over again, as we will use those 3 steps in today's painting. Step number 1 is to put the paint onto the tip of the sponge. Step number 2, we're going to paint with the sponge. Step number 3, we'll wet the tip of the sponge in the bucket, squeeze it out, and then we'll soften up what we've painted. Let's show you what we're talking about. So we have the sponge. Step number 1, we'll put the paint onto the sponge. We're going to start at the top half of the painting here. It does not matter if you start on this side or this side, but it does matter that you start on the tape. And all we're going to do is a soft pull across the page. You still want to leave lots of white here. Wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then softly bring that down towards the bottom half of the painting. And there, that's what we're looking for, a nice soft sky. If you feel you want to make the top of the sky a little bit darker, you can add some purple, maybe some Payne's gray, and those 2 colors there will give you a little bit darker richness at the top. Same thing, put the sponge onto the paint and pull across the top to make it a little darker. Wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then as needed, soften it up. I think that's going to be nice and soft for what we're looking for today. Nice and easy. What we're going to do now is we're going to put in a small range of mountains across the top of that line for the horizon, right where the tape is. It's very simple, but there is a little trick, and what I want to share with you is how we're going to do this. You're going to be pointing the sponge directly at the painting. You will apply a little bit of pressure and slowly wave the sponge across the page to create some very low hills and valleys and mountains on the horizon line. Let me show you what we're talking about. So this time what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and take the Payne's gray and a little of the purple again, but this time drier and darker. Clean out our brush, and we're going to use our sponge as I described again, pointing the sponge right at the painting and down low. We don't want really high mountains up here, way up high. We want them down low here to the horizon line. And see how I'm going to wave the sponge? That's what we're looking for. The other thing is the sponge should be mostly on the dry side. I'll add the paint color to the sponge. I'll point the sponge right at the painting, right by the tape line, and just slowly wave across the bottom. You could see how these hills are nice and low. We don't want them super high. If you have a double ghosting there, you can come back and clean that up. That gives us a feel for what we're looking for. We'll clean the sponge and move on to where we want to go to the next part of today's painting. If you feel the need, you can use one of your small brushes to come in and also clean up some of the edges. And the sponge to soften it up again. Before we move on to this next part of the painting, it is very important that you make sure that your painting is completely dry before you do what we're about to show you. Let's take a look. What we're going to do now is we're going to remove this one piece of tape across the middle here, which has created our horizon line. I want to stress again, the painting should be completely dry before you do this. I would also like to suggest when you take the tape off, you pull it in this direction away from where you have already done the painting. Also, we're going to ask you to try to be careful so you can save that piece of tape so we could use it again. Now that that piece of tape has been removed, we're going to reposition it onto the painting again, and you can understand why we want to make sure the painting is dry before you do this. We could put this directly onto the horizon line, but for today's painting we want a little bit of a white line underneath the horizon, so we're going to position the tape just slightly below the horizon line. Very softly push that down, and if you look closely at the tape, you can see that there is a line underneath the horizon line of yellow tape that will create that white line that we're looking for in today's painting. It is at this time also that we will begin to use stencil number 1. Even though you see it in this position, we're actually going to turn it upside down. And we're going to utilize the stencil in this position. What we're going to do now is we're going to mix up some of the Prussian blue color in your palette. We'll add a little touch of purple as well. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to clip the stencil into the painting. We're going to put the paint onto the sponge, holding the stencil down. Even though you've clipped it, you still need to hold it down and pull across the painting, nice and soft. Once you've done that, you can wet the tip of the sponge, squeeze it out, and then come and soften that up. If you want to use some of the lifting motion, you can do that also. We'll clean out the sponge and move on to the next part of the painting. What we just did, we're going to do the same thing all over again. We're just going to change a little bit of the coloring and show you how that's done. Let's take a look. This time we're going to go ahead and we're going to use again the Prussian blue and a little bit of the emerald green. This will make it a little bit more on the turquoise side, keeping the stencil in place. This time we're going to take this color here across the bottom of the page. Now you'll notice I use the lift motion. See our Tuesday's tips to find out more about how to do that if you haven't learned that already. We're going to wet the tip of the sponge, squeeze it out, and then we're going to soften that up a little bit there, adding in some extra color. We'll take a look and see what we have going here. This is looking good. But we're going to put that back. We want to make this one edge here against the stencil a little bit darker. The reason we put the second color down here first before putting in the darker color, we wanted to give this area a chance to dry. So what we'll do now is we'll use the brush, and this time we're going to mix up the purple in your palette with some of the Payne's gray on the very nice and dark side. Clean out our brush. Make sure that our sponge is on the somewhat dry side. We don't want to bleed under the stencil. We'll go ahead and pick that dark color up. Again, holding the stencil down with a very soft touch. We're just going to pull across the stencil and towards the edge of the stencil so that we get basically the darkness right on the edge there. Same thing, we're going to wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then we'll come in here and we'll streak across slightly to blend in some of those darker colors. Let's take a look and see what we're doing. We're doing great. We'll pull off the stencil. It's important at the end of the use of every time you use a stencil to take the back end of the sponge and clean off the stencil. Take some kind of a rag and dry off the stencil. This is stencil number 1, which is used for many of our paintings, and it should be returned to your kit now so that you can use it again in future paintings. Now we can begin to see what's going on with our painting, but we need to put some color right here at the bottom of the edge of the tape line, and we do need to do some blending here in this section as well. We'll clean out our sponge and use our brush to mix a soft blue color. And the reason I say that it's soft is because we add a little bit more water to the color, which will make it softer. What we want to do now is put the color onto the sponge, and very softly right here, we want to come in here and pull across this area here. Now you'll notice I didn't cover the whole area with just one fell swoop. I was soft, and there's some scattering areas of white. That's actually good. We want that. We're going to wet the tip, squeeze it out. Now we're going to come here and we're going to, with just a little water, very softly kind of blend in some of those areas. This will help us to give us the feel that there's a water feature here. We don't want to make it too muddy, so we don't want to just harshly pull across all over the place. We will also come back with the purple and the Payne's gray, using our brush to mix up those two colors, and create just a little tiny bit of darkness right here underneath the tape line. Not a lot, just a little. There we go. Wet the tip, squeeze it out. If you feel like you want to soften that up some more, that's your prerogative. That's looking good. I also think that I want a little darker color here at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to do the same thing here. The purple and the Payne's gray together. Onto the sponge, and down here at the bottom, softly, wistfully add in just a little hint of dark. Wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then using that lift motion, soften that up also. There we go. This looks good. We'll go ahead and clean out our sponge and move on to the next part of today's painting. That was the most difficult part of the painting today with the sponge. What we have now is the most difficult part of the painting with the brush. We're going to put in a few tiny trees along the horizon line in order to give us some additional interest into the painting today. Let's show you how that works. Again, making sure that the painting is completely dry, we're going to very carefully remove this one piece of tape from the painting. Looking good. It is at this time that you can make a choice. If you feel you want to position this piece of tape back onto the painting, onto the horizon line, so that you can paint the trees without going over the horizon line, that's your prerogative. You can choose to do that or not, that's up to you. I'll go ahead and put it down there to make it easy. And to paint these trees, we're going to use the large brush, not to paint the trees, but to just mix up a nice dark color. We're going to go ahead and use the Payne's gray. There's some purple in there already, that's perfectly fine. And we'll clean out that brush. What we're going to use now is one of the smaller brushes in your arsenal. And depending upon your skill set, you may want to use a smaller one or a larger one, depending upon what you want to do for your trees. If you've watched our video on how to paint trees, you know what we're going to do now. We're going to turn the painting upside down. Now with the painting upside down, we'll take a small brush, roll it into that dark color of the paint, and begin to give ourselves just a few trees here onto the horizon line. How you paint these trees is completely up to you. You can have many trees or just a few trees. They can be squiggly, wiggly. They can have some detail or no detail. You can make them small, large. It is your painting. You can make them however you like. If the branches cross over each other, that's perfectly fine also. As we have taught you before, all trees have one key rule. They must be thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top. In order to do this, that means you have got to be able to control the brush and its pressure. The more you push down, the thicker the line will be. The less you push down, the thinner the line will be. And as long as you are able to understand that principle and follow that rule, you'll be able to create some trees that are thicker at the bottom and thinner at the top. This has gotten a little light at the bottom. We'll go ahead and darken that up a little bit and broaden this one branching here. There we go. Go ahead and give myself another tree right here. You'll notice even though I put the piece of tape down, I'm not really using it. If you happen to paint a little on the tape, it's not the end of the world. The key is that you want to make sure that you're not too wet on the taped area, because you don't want it to bleed underneath the tape and then mess up your horizon line. I put it there more of as a precautionary method, but that's completely up to you how you deal with that. And you'll notice I have a variety of different kinds of trees here, some that are straight up, some that are craggedy. Variety is, as we say, the spice of life. So it's important that we have some variety in our painting. And I have 4 trees there, but I don't like things that are even, so I'm going to go ahead and add one more 5th tree over here. Again, how you put your trees in is completely up to you. That was the most difficult part with the brush, and we're done with the brush now. We'll put that away, and we're going to go back to the sponge to just finish off the rest of today's painting, which is very simple. Using the second motion, we're just going to pat. Real simple stuff. Let's show you what we're talking about. So now what we want to do is go back to the large brush just to mix up the color, and we're going to use the emerald green. Now if you choose to use a different color for your leaves of your trees, that is perfectly fine. If you want to use different colors for the leaves of your trees, that's fine also. We might do something like that to make some variety in our painting. Clean out the brush, go back to the sponge, make sure that it is on the dry side and squeeze it. Come over here with the green onto the paint, and where you see the tips of the branches, you just want to very softly pat a little hint of some leaves in those trees. Try not to get the leaves off the page. It tends to not work so well if you do that. Let's go ahead and, because we're going to do some variety here, these trees are fairly close together, so some of the leaves will be overlapping. And I'm going to choose to take these leaves off the page. I may add another tree there. I'm going to go ahead and, because I've got that going off the page, add a little bit more branching over here to support the bough of that part of the tree. There we go. Now I'll take the sponge with some of that Payne's gray that we used to paint the actual trees, and I'll pat it right next to where the branches are touching the leaves. This will give us a little bit of a shadow right at the bottom of the bough of the trees. Very soft patting, very soft touch here. You don't want to be too heavy-handed. There we go. You'll notice I left this tree with no leaves. I think we're going to do something different for that tree. What we want to do now is we're going to go back to the brush and mix up some new colors. We're going to mix up the sap green this time, and you can mix it right on top of where you mixed your emerald green in your palette, and that's perfectly fine. The sap green has a little bit more yellow in it, so it makes it a brighter color. We're going to use some yellow in just a minute. We'll go ahead and put that sap green onto our sponge and continue to pat some of that color into some of the trees. What you'll notice for variety is I chose not to put the yellow sap green here into this tree, and we still haven't touched this one yet, so I've added it to a couple of the trees, 2 or 3 of them. Clean out the sponge. Now what we want to do is actually go with yellow. It's hard to get a bright yellow out of the water that's dirty like this. If you feel the need to clean and change your bucket of water, that's your prerogative. Being careful, I can get the kind of yellow I want from this. I'm actually going to take the sponge in one hand. I'll put the brush with the yellow and paint the tip of the sponge with that brush. Put the brush down, grab some more yellow, and come over here to the painting, and very softly at the top bough of the trees, I'm going to add in some of that yellow. And what I want to do now is on this tree that I left blank, I'm just going to add yellow to that tree. So we have some variety now. We don't want to give the trees a halo necessarily, but we do want to add some of that color there. Now, because variety is the spice of life, we're going to do something else. We're going to come back in with one last color this time, and this time it is the alizarin crimson, the cherry red color in your palette. We'll mix that up over here. We'll do the same thing that we did with the yellow. We'll take the color from the brush and paint it to the tip of the sponge. Put the color into the paint, and now here where the yellow tree was, we're going to softly add just a little hint of that color into there, and then maybe a little bit of a hint randomly in some of these other trees, so it might be a little almost like onto the fall end of the season. There we go. Clean out our sponge, and because we got some bright yellow here on the tips, I think I want to add just a little touch of green here into these trees. Cleaning out the sponge and the brush. This time we'll use a third different green. This is the hunter's green. It's also known as hooker's green. And you can mix that up into your palette right on top of the other greens that you've mixed. We don't need as much of this, but just a little will be helpful. Same thing. Put that onto the tip of the sponge, and here where we have a little too much bright yellow, we're going to add some of that hunter's green into the top of the bough of the trees there. That should give us some nice variety. We can even add just a little hint into our yellow tree that it used to have some green leaves. Clean out our sponge and move on. At this time, we want to remove just this one piece of tape in the middle. Very carefully take that one off. It is at this time, if you feel that you want to make any other changes to the water or the rest of the painting, now is the time to do so. Once the rest of this other tape is removed, it becomes very difficult to make any other additional changes. I'm looking here at the very bottom and see that it's a little too dull here. See how this darkness is up here in the middle? I want to add a little bit of that richness down here to the bottom. This is a personal preference. You don't have to do this, but if you want to, we'll mix up the Payne's gray again and the purple, and we'll again use the sponge to come down here and bring in some extra punchy dark right here at the bottom of the page. I think that will help our painting. Give us a little bit more oomph here. There we go. Clean out the sponge. If you want maybe a little moisture on the sponge to soften that up if you feel the need. The more you soften it though, the lighter it gets, so you don't want to soften it too much. We don't want to lose all that punch. There, I think that looks good. At this time, we'll remove all of the tape and take a look at our finished painting. And there you are. With all of the tape removed and the beautiful white border wrapped around the painting, we can now see what a great job this painting came out to be. This is painting number 12, The River Bayou. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you for coming to today's art class online. We hope that your painting came out as well as you expected, or maybe even better. We hope that you will also check out the rest of our library to see other paintings to be done with our program with the sponge, both with and without stencils. And we look forward to seeing you then next time. Thank you.